Hello listener, I'm Nik Coffee, and you're listening to Ministerium Radio. Have you been feeling odd lately? Like your arms are heavy? Do they feel connected? Does it feel like time is on fire? We've been feeling it too, listener. Time feels odd now. I have many questions. Is time dying? Is it rushing? Is it covered in spiders, terrified and afraid? It feels almost like all the time that permeates our space is converging, turning into a hard, crystalline sphere, an orb, one might say. And if this is what's happening, listener, then we're in great trouble. If this was to happen, time would shatter outward, refracting each atom and neuron in our dimension through eons, years, weeks, days, hours, minutes, seconds, microseconds, and quark years, down to Planck time, and that weird thing that's just below Planck time, and you will become every version of you that you have ever been and ever will be. In the meantime, I think it would be appropriate to read a story or two. Here's one from one of our very own Ministerium mediums, James Yu. Although the big boy is just up the stairs, but not in the big room on top of the big stairs upstairs, declared this channeling to be completely unusable, I think it might hold great importance. So great that countries, worlds, and dimensions could be hanging on the words inside. It's a nice place down here by the pond in the park. It's a tranquil place. If only I'd spent more time down here than on the rooftops of the city's gray brick rectangles. Maybe then I wouldn't be here, wheezing, hoping it happens quickly. It all began when I got involved with them, when the Mafia moved in on what used to be my home. It's been a rough year. Food is scarce and hard to come by. If you had told me 2 years ago that I would have to hunt for my own food, I would shriek and laugh. You can just pick something up. But then, something happened. I'm not sure what. Maybe the crooks in the mayoral office decided to starve us out of the city. Why? What had we done that was so awful? Nothing. We just existed, and they despised that fact. The Jackdaw Mafia, though. They're smart. They can get you things. That was the word on the wind, anyway. And I was desperate. They presented me with a deal. I would get a meal every day in the form of either meat or guts. In return, I would be in their debt. My stomach growled at the mere mention of meat, so I agreed. We shook on it and flew our separate ways. It was sure enough. 1 meal per day, delivered by Alec, a small guy with broad shoulders and a broad beak on him. Meat or guts. Sometimes an eyeball. A special treat, they called it. It was neat. I could get by. The stuff I found on the street was still a big help. Eventually they told me to come along, away from the city, out to the woods and fields. We flew past more than a few construction sites. The city is growing like a big, great bacterial culture. Someone was pouring sugar on the city, and none of it landed on us. Finally, they found something. I couldn't tell what it was until I was plain in front of it. It was a hare kitten, a tiny little thing. It was frightened and hyperventilating. "Watch here," they said. The crows taught us this one. With a fast, violent peck, Connor took out the thing's eye. It screeched. I'd never heard anything scream like that. They took out the other eye, and they ate them right there in front of me. jutting their heads back and swallowing the globulous eyes whole. I ran away. I couldn't stay and watch them disembowel something so young and precious. I went home, to the roofs. When the boys came by, they weren't mad. At least they didn't look it. They said they had another job for me, something I might be able to handle. I had to rough up somebody who hangs around the technical college. Didn't catch their name. I didn't need to. They clearly pointed out a young bird hopping along down the street. I had simple instructions. Swoop down, rough her up, and chase her off. I swooped down. I pecked her. I went for the face, and I drew blood. She wailed. That was all I heard before a swarm of jackdaws descended upon me. They were all screaming and fierce. Their beaks seemed more pointed than ever. They tore at my belly, at my feathers. They went for the back of my head. That was, of course, until they landed on their ultimate plan. "Let's break his shoulders," someone screamed. "Break his shoulders," everyone then screamed. They sank their beaks into me and ripped at my flesh. My panicked honks for help went completely unheard, aside from the tall apes maybe. Maybe they could hear every desperate plea and wanted desperately to understand. Something saw me, but I can't know if it was real. Maybe it was my shocked brain toying with me. As I was dragging myself along, my wings hanging from the broken tendons and bones in my shoulders, the wind searing the exposed flesh, I saw it. A spider. Not just any old spider. I wouldn't be thinking about it now if it was small enough to eat. This thing was the size of a tall dog. No, it was bigger. It was big enough to eat a dog. Maybe it was an incarnation of death. No, that's just impossible, right? Birds don't think like we do they? I mean, they don't have sentience, right? Like, hypothetically, if someone was to walk by a situation like this, they wouldn't have an obligation to help a sentient creature, right? I hate to say this, folks, but I'm not buying this one. I love believing, and you could get me to believe almost anything, but not this time. I'll have to file a complaint about Mr. U, since he's clearly a fraud, a stalker, and generally a menace to society. I'm sorry for that bogus story. This next one is much better, and most importantly of all, it's not full of lies. This entry was recovered from the mouth of a deceased Ministerium employee, whose identity will be kept secret. It reads, "Hello, I'm not sure what is real anymore. My name is Randall, and I'm the captain of the house. I'm sure I have to explain what that means, and you, the person reading this, might think I'm trying to fool you, but I'm not, and we need help. I'm one of 6 people living inside this house. Assuming that every one of my peers are to be trusted, this house belonged to none of us before we woke up here. Personally, I was taken in my sleep and brought here. Dr. Cavendish opened the door, walked through, and it smacked shut behind him. Catherine said she sneezed, and when she opened her eyes, she was in the second bathroom on the ground floor. The bottom line is, we've been kidnapped. It was scary at first, but eventually the novelty wears off. We tried opening the front door, but we concluded that every door in this place opens to reveal red, squirming, and pulsating flesh. It's like the entire house is encased in a ginormous nugget of gross meat. How do we get food? There's only one way, really. The fridge is empty, even the shelves are gone. In the top, where there's usually just a light, there's a circular hole through which a sphincter-looking thing is dangling. If you poke it with something, it produces a dark green little ball. Well, they're tasty enough, but they're not very exciting after a year or two. We were okay for a while, until Toby, one of our people, began to scare the others. We have to play homemade board games and things like that to stay sane, and he wanted none of it. I have no idea where he got it, but he somehow got hold of a butane lighter and tried to burn the curtains. Trust me, I don't much like it here, but burning a house you can't leave is a bad idea. I'm sure you, whoever you are, would agree. Well, Randall, in fact, I do. We've locked him in his room until he calms down for now. From what I can deduce, there's only one real way out of here, and that's through the toilet. I can only hope that the flush is strong enough and the pipes wide enough to get this letter out there. Godspeed, little letter. Godspeed. Godspeed indeed, little letter. See, that is a story. I have no idea what it means, but it was very nice. I think that's all the time we have for tonight, listener. I think if there was a takeaway tonight, it's that low flush toilets could kill you. Good plumbing and a general understanding of and experience with laser weapons are a surefire way to keep your house safe. Good night, and remember to praise the Dark One. Thank you for listening to another episode of Ministerium Miskatonic Radio. If you have a story you'd like us to read on the show, you can go ahead and contact us with the email in the description. And if you haven't already, go ahead and punch all those buttons below this video to be notified of future videos. That's all for now. Thank you.